Hi, welcome back to Burning River Bushcraft. Today we're going to be looking at the Andaltool. So the Andaltool is made and designed by James Andal. He was one of Morris Kahansky's instructors at Karamat. So this is a classic Morris Kahansky inspired knife. It has a blade about the width of your palm and a handle just a little bit wider than the palm of your hand. That's kind of the size knife that I gravitate to lately. So as soon as I saw this knife and became aware of it, I needed to get one. So these knives are a little bit difficult to find used. I don't think there's that many of them out there. James Andal sells them occasionally on Facebook. I've seen them for sale, but there are not a lot of used knives out. I've looked and looked for quite a few years before I finally found one. As far as the knife itself, this is high carbon steel. I believe this is a legitimate saw blade. This was a saw blade at one time. I'm not 100% positive on that. It's got micarta scales. It's got a great contour to it. Fits in your hand really well. It's got an excellent point to it. That's the one thing when I switched over and used the skookum a lot more compared to like a Kephart style knife, I instantly started missing this point when I had any other style knife. So a fine little point like this really helps with carving. So moving up the handle, we have the hollow pins. My skookum has 2 hollow pins, 3 solid pins. There really is no point to a solid pin, to be honest. A hollow pin gives you a little bit more options. Obviously you can lash this to a stick. I'm not so much interested in stabbing anything with it, but if I was harvesting wild edibles or something from a high branch, tie this to a stick and it just makes a great extension on your knife. So if you look at the profile of this knife, it's very, very slim, and I kind of like that. I have had knives in the past that were too skinny. This is not one of them. This is just about right, in my opinion. I think it goes down to maybe a 1/4 inch at the smallest point. But it locks in your hand real well. Even when I'm wearing gloves, I've really never had an issue carrying this Andaltool. So this knife, again, is part of a system, and I like systems. So it's a simple fold-over Kydex sheath. There's only like 2 rivets on this thing, no belt loops at all. So it's very, very skinny, very, very slim, and it's designed for neck carry. The retention's on it's great. And it's a lightweight knife, so this is maybe an 1/8 inch. It's pretty skinny. And as I mentioned before, the micarta scales are kind of on the slim side. So it neck carries very well. This is probably a better style sheath than the Nordic center sewn skookum style sheath. This isn't as cool, but it's probably more functional. It's more lightweight. You're not going to stain it up as much. I've used this in the rain a ton. Love the retention on it. It goes in and out easier. It's a better overall design. It just doesn't have that awesome look to it. So as I mentioned, this sheath is a system. So taking the knife out here for a minute, he has this is just a small piece of aluminum that he's included as a sharpening stone, I guess. This was actually covered in plastic when I bought it. The original owner had never used it, and I never really put much faith in it, to be honest, but it does a decent job. So this aluminum that James adds with his knife, I really didn't put a lot of faith in. Like I mentioned, the other owner didn't use the thing at all, and I actually used it once out of necessity. I was starting to lose my edge a little bit, and I didn't feel like stropping it, so I decided to try this aluminum sharpening stone, and it actually worked pretty well. It's no substitute for a damaged blade. If I was to drop this and put a nick in it or something, I would probably rub this thing forever before I got it out of there. But this is a pretty good idea. Something this small, especially if you had a diamond stone or something like that, it would be probably a good idea to add to your sheath. Bad thing is if you lose it, you're kind of screwed with diamond stone. That's probably why thin, light aluminum, you just slide it in here and you really just forget about it. If it's there for you, great. If you didn't lose it, it came in handy for me once at least. There's been many times that I've been skinning game and just needed a touch. It wasn't bad. My knife's not bad enough where I'm going to dig through a creek and start rubbing it with rocks, but I just wanted to get it back to perfect shape, and a little quick stone like this would work pretty well for it. Now what he has here to hold it on is just a Ranger band. He's got a big piece of inner tube, and that's really all that holds it in. And I've never lost it. I don't take it out that much, to be honest. Like I said, I only used it a couple times. Now, in some of my other knife reviews, I've mentioned that the ferro rod on your knife loop seems to have gone out of style, and I think it's a good idea personally. I see no disadvantage to having a ferro rod with you, even if it's not your main one. What James has actually done with his, which I think is a pretty good idea, is he's got it through this same piece of inner tube, and it's actually tethered on. So as I mentioned, there's a very good chance that you could lose this aluminum sharpener. Never have, but it's very possible. Now, a ferro rod is heavier and it's round shape, so it's got less surface area that's actually going to be touching this inner tube. So you've got a better chance of this actually sliding out. So to counteract that and to make sure it's always with you, he's got it tethered right to the neck sheath. So I haven't used it that much. It's not a convenient place to keep your ferro rod. So this is an emergency ferro rod, which is about perfect. So you don't always need a giant 1/2-inch ferro rod, and especially if you're that bad of shape where you're using your emergency rod, you're not using your Bushcraft kit that you're carrying out with you, and you actually need a ferro rod for real, you would have to take your sheath off. But again, who cares? That's very, very small deal. Very little deal compared to having it with you in the first place and then having it where it's secured and not likely to just slide off. Now, as additional gear with this sheath, you've also got this Ranger band, which I've made traps with Ranger band in the past. Obviously, it's a flame extender. You're going to have a hard time lighting this with a ferro rod, but if you were to get a flame with a marginal tinder bundle, you start putting slivers of this rubber Ranger band on there, and it's going to help you out in wet weather. Now, it does have, I suppose this is gutted paracord. It's laced pretty flat, pretty thin. So you do have cordage with this too, but again, you know, there's plenty of natural cordage around you. But it just adds something to have a lightweight, compact system that you can keep with you. As I mentioned, James Andal sells these on Facebook, I believe, and he's got just a real short video, and I've seen it a couple times when I was looking for the knife and when I decided to purchase it. And I believe he dallies it up like this. He just puts a half wrap in his ferro rod, and the reason for that is he'll actually set this knife up in like a camp sheath configuration. So with the knife in this configuration here, it's a lot easier to draw it out in camp, and then, you know, you can whittle away whatever kind of task you're doing. That's where a neck knife really shines. And then it's easier to slip in, easier to work whatever you're doing, ready for your knife again, and it comes out and you're ready to go. Now, he doesn't advocate carrying his knife like this, and neither would I. The retention's great, and it would work, but if you do it 100 times, maybe once your knife will fall out. I've carried this knife quite a bit, and a lot of times I'll just carry it in my pocket. I'll show that carry configuration here in a bit. And yeah, I've just got dust and dirt and all kinds of crap in my Kydex sheath. So if you're not careful, like I'm not, a lot of times you'll get something in here and you won't have full retention. So yes, you can use it just like this all day. Great around camp. And when you're done with it, put it away. But when you actually go off and start moving for the day, you just take this wrap back out off your ferro rod and you'd return it to a normal butt up configuration. That way, if something was in here and I didn't quite get my knife 100% in my sheath, it's a lot less likely to fall out. Gravity is your friend. But either way, you hear that nice solid Kydex snap. So great design sheath. Just a little tweak that James has shown that you really can't do with the leather skookum sheath. So another sheath variant that he has shown is I've just kind of got this all folded up nice and neat, and you don't have to be this neat about it. And he just tucks the neck cord underneath his Ranger band, and then, you know, he refers to it as a nice small pocketable sheath, which that it is. And to be honest, I carry like this most of the time. I don't always have a belt knife. I don't always have a neck knife. If I'm just moving around, playing around, practicing some of my skills, when I get where I'm going, I'll take my knife out. I'll configure it up to my neck sheath. I would carry this in my pocket for a hunting season. I've skinned at least a deer with this, and I think I dressed out 2 turkey. And both those times, I just kind of had it with me. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't want a knife sheath swinging around my neck while I was turkey hunting. So this just fit down in the leg pocket of my pants, and I was good to go. So another great thing about this knife, which a lot of knives overlook, the skookum does not, and neither does this one, is it's got this nice little indentation here to pull the knife out. Because as I mentioned, this was my main knife through an entire hunting season. So, you know, your hands get kind of cold, and you can't always pull a knife out of a tight sheath. Now, this isn't an overly tight sheath, but it's got that nice Kydex click to it. And just having this little indentation on either side lets me either pull it out to get it started if I've got big mittens on or something, and then bring the knife out. Or a lot of times just with my 2 smallest fingers, I can pop the knife out and I'm good to go. So great overall design if you're into the smaller style bushcraft knives. So this is a great little knife that will do practically any bushcraft task that you need to do. So rather than just beat on this thing and baton it and do all kinds of silly things like I've done in previous videos, I'm going to use this knife exclusively to make a primitive trap. So if you're interested in seeing how I make a lever split stick deadfall trap, go ahead and follow the link in the description to the other video, or if you just want to see more of this knife in action. So in my other knife review videos, I give the knife a grade on a scale of 1 to 10. So let's go over the positives and the negatives to this knife. First off, I love the size of this knife. This is maybe an 8-inch total package here, and I've got a sharpening stone, a combustion device, and a pretty cool little bushcraft knife. Super nice retentive sheath, different carry options. I do like that. The handle on this knife is a positive. It's very, very comfortable. I could hold this knife all day, and I have. This is just something I can hold and carve and whittle with. No real issues at all with the handle, no hot spots. The hollow pins on this knife just add to it. They're kind of funky looking compared to the standard solid pins that everybody's used to seeing. These are chamfered real nice, so there's no hot spots. I can feel that it is a hollowed pin, but it's really not causing me any issues. I love the contour of the handle. It fits the back of my hand, my smaller fingers, very well. I have no tendency to slide up on the knife at all like I do on some of the more straight knives. I have nice little flats here for my thumb. So it's very, very well thought out knife as far as the handle goes. Great detail, not overbearing at all, but definitely any grip you need to make. If we move up the knife, I've got a nice sharpened 90-degree spine. It's got that curved blade profile like skookum, like Morris Kahansi's always advocated. Super fine point, which is great for getting in some of the harder notches and cutting holes into knives and actually making things with wood. So if you're just carving away, making feather sticks and, you know, things that you're going to burn, you don't really notice that much, but when you're actually trying to craft something and create a specific item, a tip like this really does help you. I mentioned I like the size of the whole package. I like the fact that I've got a sharpening stone and a combustion device and a little bit of cordage all in this sheath. I like the neck carry. I'm a neck carry guy. I like the fact that it rotates up, handle down for more of a modern neck carry for camp use and things like that. As far as the negatives go, a lot of times I wish there was some way to belt carry this knife. That's probably my main complaint about it. The knife itself, I really don't have any complaints with. It's not the most glamorous looking knife in the world, but I don't care. It's got I would prefer to have a natural micarta handle like this to anything flashy. This is not 01 tool steel, like I said. I think it's like 1075 or something. I believe this is a recycled saw blade. I could be wrong on that. Somebody probably knows, and if you put it in the comments, I will make a correction in the description. But no real problems with the knife itself. The knife's great. The sheath is great. I love the function of the sheath. A lot of times I would just have this knife in my pocket because I didn't feel like neck carrying it. There was no method to attach this to my belt. Now, Skookum doesn't either. From the factory, I had a dangler put on one of my 2 Skookum sheaths. So I have the ability to carry a Skookum around my belt, or around my neck at least. With this thing, I don't have that. This would be super easy to do, super easy to fix. If I just had another set of holes here, I could make some kind of either attach a tech lock, which is not my favorite way to carry a knife, but it would work. A simple Kydex and leather dangler, maybe a 2-piece arrangement similar to what the Pathfinder knife had. This knife, really high, really tight on my belt, would be very unobtrusive, and it would be something that I would be more likely to have with me than continually have it in my pocket where I could lose it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to put this thing at like a 9. This is a solid knife. I really have nothing bad to say about it. They're kind of hard to get. They're kind of hard to find. They're very hard to find on the used market. There's really no like high demand scalper price for these things. There's just not that many of them out there. The number of knives made, I don't think, is that high, and that's kind of a shame. This is not a knife where people are going to run into and encounter all that often and say, hey, let me try that, and then fall in love with the thing. I have gone out of my way to look for various types of bush tool style knives, and this Andaltool is a great one. If I didn't have the Skookum, this would probably be my #1 Bushcraft type knife. I like the blade profile. I really like the system, and I just don't really have anything bad to say about it.